creators of the MK Plus hacks for the original Mortal Kombat arcade games. Some of my favorite hacks I have ever played, and I'm very excited to be talking to you two. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
Good, man.
So could you just give like an overview of what the project is in your own words, just so people could give it have a better understanding of what we're going to be talking about today?
Go ahead, Drew.
All right. Well, for me, the MK Plus games are kind of a quality of life update with a lot of bug fixes and enhancements and things. Kind of bringing the arcade games, uh, to where we are now, as kind of it's kind of an extension of the arcade days, I think.
Okay, I think it goes way deeper than that, but we'll get
Oh
to
yeah, yeah. Oh
it.
yeah. It goes way deeper than that. But yeah, there's a lot more to talk about, and I'm sure Paul's got, because Paul was the one that really created the MK Plus. I don't know what you want to call it, but he's the creator behind it. So I'll let him talk a little bit more.
Yeah. So basically, if you've seen the first interview with me, you kind of have a backstory, but it revolves around just the nostalgia of the game, and for me, MK2 is my favorite, and for Drew, it's Ultimate MK3. So we both kind of pour our heart and soul into the project to do various bug fixes, additions to the game, you name it. There's a lot. I mean, we've put years into these two games, and True just released the second beta for UMK3 Plus. He did like 99.9% of the second release, so I'm happy for him. So um, it's like a passion project, I guess you'd call it, like a labor of love.
Yeah.
So if there's something very minute, all the way down to maybe an audio sample that isn't right or it's overlapped, for instance, case in point would be Scorpion Spear on Ultimate MK3 Plus. Um, when you would spear your opponent, half of his dialogue of "get over here" would be overlapped by the sound of the blood drops hitting the floor, so it would be kind of truncated a little bit. So we go through and we fix various things like that, and you wouldn't believe how many minor details that other people notice that we might not even notice. There's like so many things that somebody else might point out, and like the smallest detail, but they love the game so much, they play it so much that they're able to point that out, and we can address it.
Yeah, I think really, like Paul mentioned, it being a labor of love. That I would call it, for me, a love letter to the game, or a love letter to the series. And what he's talking about with a lot of the missing stuff, at least in MK UMK3 Plus, there's like Ermac's animality. His like the animation of the frog is in the game. It was just never brought out in code, so we recreated that. Same with classic Sub Zero's friendship with the snowman, Jack in the Box. All that animation's already in the game. It was just never used. So yeah, there's a lot of fine detail that goes into it.
So for people that are have just heard of the project or maybe haven't heard about it at all, would you think it's fair to say that the best way to describe this is taking the original Mortal Kombat arcade games and then fixing some of the bugs that were still in there just because all of these games were rushed to release, just like most of them still are today, but also going back and adding things that were true to the game but would bring it up to today's competition levels to make sure the competitors are more evenly balanced on some of them, and finding things like you just described where there's animations and code that weren't finished, and you guys are finishing them up like that. I mean, is that a decent way to describe the project in like a 1 minute thing?
Yeah, I think it's spot on, pretty much. And you said it. You hit the nail on the head when you said like a tasteful kind, because there's a fine balance between adding stuff and kind of going overboard.
Hmm.
So we kind of want to keep in mind the original, I guess, vision of the original developers, and just kind of make sure everything that's added makes sense. Not to go too far, but just enough to give that extra, so someone else that's played the game for the last 25, 30 years can kind of thrive to play to get and kind of be surprised when they see it. So
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a big part of it too, because I'm sure you could do things which I think are fun, by the way, but you could do things like replace animations and sprites with, like Street Fighter. So you could put Guile in Mortal Kombat or something like that. And that stuff's neat, but that's not at all what this project's about. I've seen you've added characters back to certain. I think it was UMK3, right? There was more characters that you're able to select from, um, but it was all in the code. It's not things like, you're not making stuff up. This is basically you're following the original vision of the
Yeah,
games, but just
Right.
trying to make it a little bit more streamlined and tweaked and bring out all that extra stuff in it.
Right. Like
exactly.
for instance, you mentioned more characters being selectable uh, in UMK3 plus. Like so, Rain was not in the arcade game. He's actually, if you look into the code, he's just a reskinned reptile with a fancy hacked in life bar. Uh, so we had some source from like leaked Mortal Kombat trilogy N64 source code. Was able to use some of that to build his special moves, his fatalities, and things like that. Um, so yeah, like that, some additions were made like that, but yeah, those kind of stay true to the spirit of the arcade experience.
Yeah, you'll see once in a while we'll add something kind of like a new character select screen because sometimes it makes sense to maybe do something like that if you have more characters to choose from and there's not
Mhm.
enough initial room on the original select screen. It's kind of like a challenge, so to ourselves.
So you're digging deep into the code of this game, right? If you're talking about taking source code from one into the other, or how, from a most of the people listening to this, even if they're not programmers, they understand at least the concepts behind programming. So without going too crazy deep, like, how are you doing this? Are you decompiling the original? Are you doing ROM hack style things where you're looking for areas of the hex and replacing it with others? I mean, what's like the overview of how all of this works?
Well, I started off by using the biggest tool you can have is MAME with debugger because you can
Hmm.
actually see the source code. I'm sorry, not source code, the assembly code.
Hmm.
And I literally started with a note, a pen, and a pad, and started jotting down actual bytes of assembly code. And then a good friend of Istis came along, and he's a programmer. That's his profession. He's like, hey, I can make you this this script to assembly code applications where you can write script and make your job a lot easier. So he was the initial, I guess, spark for my interest getting into it because he made a hack for MAME where he had for MK2 he had Smoke, Jade, and New Cybot playable, but it was a real rough roundabout way of doing it. So I'm like, hey, if I can get this to work on actual arcade games, that would be really cool. So that's kind of how that started. So um, with an addition to Vistas's tool and a really nice hex editor in MAME, you can do a lot. And then from
Hmm.
there, it's just kind of understanding kind of how the structure works and jumping code to adding new code and jumping back into the existing code because it's essentially a linear process. So if you're going to add code, you want to jump from your existing place to your new code space and then back to it. I mean, there's other methods, but that's the simplest way to do it. But that's pretty much a good rundown of how it goes about. And then if you by chance kind of want to add a lot of things, we took it a step further and I actually have some additions to Abyssus's original application to where it will automatically rewrite your jump locations and you can just put massive amounts of code in any particular place of the ROM where you have free space and it makes your life a lot easier. So
Hmm. Now, for anybody unfamiliar, you mentioned doing this testing in MAME, so obviously it's playable in MAME, but all of these ROM hacks that you've put out, you're able to flash them to ROM chips and replace the chips on an arcade board and use them on real hardware. That's how I have I think, MK2 and 3 hooked up right now with the MK Plus in there. And so everything that you're doing is still 100% within the confines of the original arcade hardware. Which, once again, I love crazy ROM hacks, but you're not like adding code of something that didn't exist back then that's impossible to run on original hardware. This all runs perfectly. With I've never seen any kind of performance issues on Plus versus the original ever. So
Yeah,
whatever you're doing is absolutely within the confines of that set of
yeah, we
hardware.
have pretty good testers.
Yeah.
Michael and Ryan are real good hardware testers, and I myself and Drew also has the Wolf unit for Ultimate MK3. So I have the three UMK1, 2, and or UMK3, UMK2, and MK1 myself. But it's not very feasible for me to, my office is upstairs, my machine's downstairs. There's a lot of run around, but we have some really good testers that are able to aid in that and expedite the process. But yeah, the number one goal is machine compatibility, and we expect MAME to just comply with it, because it's just the way MAME works and how it's developed to emulate the actual hardware.
You would be
Yeah.
surprised the things that you can get away with in MAME that do not work on hardware.
Yeah. A little more
So
forgiving, yeah.
Yeah.
So you do obviously test all of these on both then, because every time people flash these, there's not any issues with them. So I mean, obviously your beta testers, I'm sure, run into
Right.
problems because that's
Oh
what
yeah.
beta testers do. So
That goes back to the MAME debugging tool, which is very nice because as a developer, we can go do our changes in code, load it almost instantly within MAME and test it from there. And then that's the first step. The second step, if everything seems to be fine, we go ahead and we try it on hardware, make sure everything complies. And that's pretty much the way it goes.
So I certainly would never try to go through all the changes because I believe it's hundreds at this point, if not more than
Yeah.
that. So, and if anybody's interested, all of this documentation's up on the website. You list all the changes up on there and everything. But just some fun questions. Like, what do you think for each of you is the most fun thing that's you've added or or fixed or whatever else? Like, what's one of the top one or two things that really stand out to you as like you're very happy that you fixed or added that?
You want to go through?
Yeah, I'll go first. From the most the thing I think that gets the most positive feedback, the what people think is one of the best additions for UMK3 Plus for Beta 2, the selectable palettes. So you know how it works. If you have a mirror match, player two gets the alternate palette and things like that. So what I did for Beta 2 was I added a third palette to every character, and I also made their palettes selectable on the character select screen. So you go over to you go over to whatever character you want, and you hit start. It gives you player two palette. If you hit start again, it gives you the alternate palette, the third palette. If you hit start again, it takes you back to the original. And it works on both select screens, and it works on the versus portraits as well. And you would be surprised how much work actually went into that. It was probably about 3 times more work than I thought it was originally going to be. But but I'm glad I stuck it out because people really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, I would say the funnest thing I added had to be without a doubt probably 2 versus 2 tag team mode where you can tag in and out for MK2. That was one of the biggest accomplishments I think on that, and the biggest endeavor as far as adding a feature that caused me a lot of trouble, just various crashes, was probably the new character select screen for MK2, the Killer Instinct style select screen. But I would have to say, without a doubt, that the tag mode is really awesome.
That
Which,
is
by the
really
way,
cool.
was brought to UMK3 as well. So obviously, you have your
Hmm.
usual 2v2 on MK3, but we did add the tag feature for that too.
That is absolutely awesome. So the focus has been on UMK3 and 2. Have you looked at MK1? I know you were considering it at one point, but I realize how much work goes into this. Or I guess the better way to put it is I can only imagine how much work goes into it. It's probably even more than I'm picturing, but
Yeah, so MK1 has actually been in progress for quite some time, and I'm on a bit of a break, but I can tell you that if you're in our Discord, there is a channel. Say if you like made a contribution. There's a little section in there that allows you to test any daily builds, and there is actually an MK Plus build that's playable. I can tell you it has Repel is selectable from the original select screen. Um, there is a brand new overhaul of the one-player tower, which
Hmm.
looks great because it uses the large portraits instead of the small ones. Um, there's a little bit at the end of the game called Shang Tsung's Treasures. It's kind of like a slot machine where you'll have, I think there's 6 to 8 icons, and you pretty much roll the dice and you get a random reward. And there's 2v2 tag in that as well. Um, Little minor adjustments and additions would be after you select your character, they do their win pose and their name is said. Normally it doesn't do that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's a slew of things with that as well, and that's still in the pipeline. I've kind of been pulled various different things. I like to wander. It gets me in trouble because I can't really focus on one thing. But that's definitely in the pipeline. And I might add, it's going to be only for T unit boards only, just because Y units there are some significant changes, and the addressing is a little bit different. So it's you can't kind of run the hack on both boards. So instead
Hmm.
of that would be twice the work doing it for both boards. So I'm supporting the newest T unit board. So
Makes sense. While I do want to talk a lot more about the changes in the process and all of that, I definitely want people to get an idea of the easiest way to play this. So, can you take like your MAME files for MK2 and 3, or I guess one if you're in the beta program, and then just flash it with a ROM patcher and play it with MAME? Do you need a special version of MAME for people that don't have chip flashers at home that just want to try this out? What do you think is the best way to play this?
do you want to answer, Drew? Do you want me to answer?
Yeah. Uh, I think uh, I think in the Discord there's a link to where you can get the custom version of MAME that was put together that supports all of the publicly released Plus games. Because UMK3 Plus has the additional 4 graphics chips on it. So uh, just trying to plug it into standard MAME and renaming it UMK3 is gonna crash the game pretty quickly. So yeah, there is a custom main build out there. I believe Fightcade 2, which uses FB Neo, their core is updated. That will run MK2 plus Beta 2, UMK3 plus Beta 2. So it's definitely out there. I think the website has the patch files. You got to run the Lunar IPS program in order to patch the files because downloading ROMs and supplying ROMs for download is illegal.
Right.
But patch files are okay. Uh, so you would have to do that. There's video tutorials out there that are readily accessible in the Discord also. So you can. It's. Uh, I say it's easy, but I also built the hack, so I kind of know I kind of know how it works. But there are some really good tutorials and stuff in the Discord in the main related channel. Shout out real quick if I can to Hugo Stiglitz. DA, that's his username on there, who built the custom MAME, as well as has put together some good tutorials.
Hmm. So that seems pretty straightforward, especially, if you wouldn't mind, I'll grab all the links from you after we're done with this so I could put it in the main post so people could just go right there and have all the info to get started right away. One of the things that a lot of beginners like to do, or just lazy people like me that don't want to have to redo a PC thing, is use Raspberry Pis. It's pretty common for people to even have multiple micro SD cards where they can just put different stuff on there. Have you tested it on a Pi, or at least a Pi 4, which is powerful enough to not suck for the emulation?
Uh,
Have you tested on that? Is there a special build for it or anything?
I only have a Raspberry Pi 3B, I think it is, and I have
Hmm.
not. But from what I've heard, Raspberry Pi uses. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they use RetroArch,
Hmm.
uh, and I think there's problems with that specific emulator.
Hmm.
But other than that, I haven't tested on Pi 4. It's probably better, I would have to imagine. But there are people out there I know that have an emulator on their Dreamcast or PlayStation 3 that actually run RetroArch and they play it. But I will say they do have some really strange bugs sometimes with that particular
Yeah.
setup. Um, so it's not guaranteed to run as accurate as it should be.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that platform for many reasons, and I do hope that I know this is a shitload of work, but I do hope people swing back around and try to build a Raspberry Pi boot image that's just MAME, nothing else. Even I mean, a GUI is always much appreciated, but if I had to choose, I would rather just launch from a command line or what are they, TUIs they call them. So it's not
Yeah,
really a GUI, but it's, you could still use arrows to select stuff. I would love to see just MAME on a Pi just to really take advantage of this stuff and make
maybe like
things
a
easier.
Mr. FPGA menu.
Yeah, yeah, basically. Um, and I think that's going to be probably the most exciting thing. Is I know Hotego had mentioned that he's going to start looking into MK soon. So if that happens on the Mister, this is that's going to be pretty massive to be able to play that right on Mister.
Yes, I've been learning. I've been down that street. That's another thing that's pulling me in a different direction is learning System Verilog
Hmm,
because I just recently got let me plug this cable so I don't pull it all. But I just recently got my hands on
nice.
one, so that's a lot of my time to go into that, and I've got something going on that. If Hotego wanted to, he could easily blow me out the water getting that to mainstream. But this is kind of like the way I did the hacks and stuff. It's learned by I guess the process of doing it because there's not really much out there. A few tutorials, but you really have to get your hands on and start working with it to understand how it works. Get your feet wet, and then from there, hopefully make something work. So
Yeah. I mean, also, this stuff's all open source, right? So collaboration is probably massively appreciated by everybody. So even if Otego jumps in all the way with this, I'm positive anything that you've already done would help contribute to it. And especially both of your knowledge of the ROMs and how the game works and all of that. That's that's years of experience that you two have that, I don't care how smart somebody is. If they're just starting out, that's definitely something that could be added to it. So hopefully he'll reach out when he starts that process, and I'd definitely love to see it on Mister. I actually have mine sitting right in front of me because I was just shooting a video where I needed to capture footage, and it's just so much easier to grab this thing and
nice.
plug it directly in. So do you both have programming backgrounds? How are you able to go in and start doing this, or is this just a hobby? Do you do programming for your day jobs?
Go ahead.
All right, yeah, it's a hobby for me. I've worked in IT for the past 15 years,
Mm,
but my job is not as a programmer. So, and assembly is the only programming language I'm really remotely good with, and it's because of the It's because of the MK Plus games. So yeah, very and I I don't know quite the best way how to say it, but it's amazing what a hobby or an interest can allow you to learn if you put some time into it.
yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. For me, this is kind of it's way out of left field for me because I'm an automotive mechanic. I've been for 20 years, so I basically fix things. Hence the MK2 fixes probably, but it's just like I said with the Mister. You just got to jump in, get your feet wet. Um, I dabble in a lot. Um, it's obviously the assembly, C sharp, Java, some Go. Even got into writing some a processor module for the TMS 34,000 series for Ghidra. So you can at this point you can load in the program file. Let's say you take your UJ12 and UG12, your two program files for MK2, and you do the interleave process. You can load that into Ghidra, which is an open source disassembler made by NSA, and you can actually follow the process of the program and the flow of it. So it's basically just I don't know. I get taken from one place to another. It kind of leaves me. I'm kind of like a drifter in that area. But it's crazy the stuff you learn just rooting from one game. So
Yeah, I mean the mechanic thing makes sense though, because I worked in an auto shop when I was a kid for a couple years, and a couple of my friends are mechanics, and being able to not just see the problem that you're working on but understand the whole flow of things from start to finish is something that is integral to programming and being a mechanic that doesn't suck.
right.
If your car won't start, you don't just put a new battery in and then call it a day. You got to check the alternator, you got to make sure everything else is,
Yeah.
there's a whole system of things around it. So that actually makes complete sense that you would be good at
And
both of these things.
it's kind of weird because it kind of they come together a little bit in some aspects, because when I'm looking and learn about this Verilog and clock timing and different types of communication, bus lines and stuff, I get that in my automotive field when I'm diagnosing maybe control module communication issues, stuff like that. So it kind of overlaps a little bit, but I know just enough to get me, keep me entertained and keep me going to learn more and more and more. So yeah, it's they kind of go hand in hand somewhat.
Hmm. So, which of the MK games is both of your favorites, and why? Because that's one that's always an awesome debate that nobody agrees with me on this one, but it's a personal preference. I'm not trying to tell anybody there's a better version or anything.
Oh
But
yeah, we've
which
covered this a few times, haven't we, Drew?
Yes, we have. We
See,
but
from
we
my from my point of view, I always tell him this, and we jab each other all the time. He's obviously big into UMK3. I'm an MK2 fan because it kind of just starts. I think it starts at a younger age when it's nostalgic. Where does it start for you? For some people, you may be a little older, and it may be the original MK. Some people may be, some down the line. But for me, I always say it's like chess versus checkers when it comes to UMK or MK2 to UMK3. And Drew knows I use that term quite a bit. But for me, it's MK2. But I'll let Drew tell you what his is. Pretty sure I
well,
know.
it's definitely UMK3. I mean, UMK3 it's fast, it's loud, it's violent, and it's for me, it's not chess versus checkers. It's checkers versus like chess with a move timer, because you've got to know how the game works. You got to be good at the game, but you also got to be fast, because that run button and those auto combos and those 50% combos and those single frame startup moves. I could go on for a while. You've got to be quick. You got to be quick, and
hmm.
you got to know what's going on. Now, I will give Paul this. I think MK2 overall is the best game in the arcade series. The improvement that it was over MK1, the kind of fit and finish or polish that they put into the game, the video quality, the audio quality, all of that stuff is better than UMK3. But as far as like the gameplay and stuff go, it's got to be UMK3 for me.
I can
Hmm.
agree. The technicality standpoint, I think, with the run jabs and stuff, to be on the competitive side, UMK3 I think is a little more difficult. But he's right about MK2 being, I think, overall probably a better package, so to speak. They have larger sprites for the fighters. That's one of the biggest things. So they
Mhm.
downsized them a little bit for UMK3. The audio was brand new with the DCS sound system. So they got away from the Yamaha and went to that. So it was leaps and bounds better in the audio department. And so I set the bar there, and UMK3 kind of took it from there, and they added a lot more stuff, because you know how it is as probably a game developer. Everybody, the next game they want more, more, more. So it's basically how it goes in almost every, I guess, series of
It's
games.
funny you say that because MK1 has always been my favorite, and I know the shortcomings, obviously, but it's because it's less.
Yeah.
So I still remember at least half of everybody's moves and fatalities from my childhood. I still jumping in, you have a smaller character select screen. I could get to the mirror match every single time I play it now. Probably on, if I'm actually trying on one quarter, I can get to the or two quarters, get to the mirror match, and it's something that I could always jump in and play. Whereas MK2, I get my butt whooped every time. I've never gotten good at it. I've been better at 3 against the computer, but just like you were saying, Drew, there's so many different things. Like I could never play that competitively. There's been people playing that since the day it was released that know every single thing
Oh yeah.
about it, and it's excellent for competitions for people who are really good at it. But uh, I don't know. The first one will always be my favorite. Also because, like you were saying, with nostalgia, the first time I saw Sub Zero rip out somebody's head and spinal cord, I could not stop laughing. I thought that was the funniest, most over the top bullshit I'd ever seen, and I loved it.
It was great. In addition, I don't know if, but MK1 lacks the crossover moves. You jump over your opponent and kick them or punch them from the other side. But that is another addition that's in MK1 Plus. So
Which completely changes
the dynamics,
the
yeah.
dynamics. Yeah, it is. It's a game changer. No pun intended.
So now, all of your games, if I remember correctly, there's an option for classic combat, right?
Hmm.
Yep.
So that's essentially the original games, but with some of the extra features still allowed. Would
Yeah.
you go into a little bit and explain what that is, and or maybe it's as simple as I just said, but I think there's more to it than that.
Well, yeah, there's in every arcade there's the test menu, and you'd be surprised though, because a lot of people don't know the test menu even exists. I think in MAME it's F2 possibly
Hmm.
for the shortcut key. So you go in there, and we like to keep it as true to the original as possible when adding new things. And when we do that, we do it by adding new options in the test menu, which are stored in the CMOS area of the actual board on the chip. So you can go in there and turn off different options if you want it to be more true to life. Like you can go in there and turn off certain new stages. You can turn off, secret characters. You can turn off various additions. If there's room left over in the CMOS chip to add another option, chances are we've added it just for that sake, just to keep it true to the original game, and give people options. They might not like a feature, so
Mhm.
Yeah, I think for me, coming from a community of competitive players with UMK3, um, probably the most important thing is preservation of original gameplay. Because there was a hack out there of a couple of these games that made a lot of hard coded changes that you couldn't say I don't want these, I want to play the original style, but you couldn't do that, and it threw off it changed the competitive balance of the game, to the point where like some moves were removed for some characters. So like the core of you know the core of it for me was preserving original gameplay, but also giving people the options if they want to try something new. Yeah, we do have balance options that are available out there. If you don't want, if you don't want the guy to sit there and teabag you for 10 seconds, don't turn on our extended fatality time. um, so yeah, I that's probably one of the things that I appreciate most about the Plus games is the dedication to keeping things, or the availability of original arcade gameplay. Um, Outside of like, I guess, blatant bugs. One example I'll give is UMK3, where player one sector can put out a homing missile, and while the homing missile's out, he can throw a regular missile. Player two sector can't do that.
Hmm.
And there's no reason a character should be nerfed or buffed based on which side of the which control stick they have. So like, does that change gameplay? At the core, I suppose so, but it is a pretty blatant bug that needed to be fixed.
Hmm. What about stuff like Sonya and MK1? You could just beat everybody with that character. You know, in MK1, are you going to have like classic combat, so it's just exactly the way it was with all of the unfair gameplay, and then in the MK Plus version, have the characters be more fair to each other? That's something you wrote a lot about on your website when this project first started, was evening that out to make it more fair for competition. So did
Yeah,
you guys want to talk about that for a bit?
yeah. So that goes back to kind of like the CMOS setting. If we were to do any kind of significant gameplay changes as far as balancing goes, we always include options. Like we can do original, we can do you can call it competitive if you
Mhm.
want, or balanced. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about with Sonya. She has a pretty nasty leg grab that you can get from, I don't know, 10 feet away sometimes. And that is definitely addressed in MK1 Plus, and also addressed is her input for her ring, her projectile, because it's a really odd way to do it. Off the top of my head, I want to say it was hold low punch, back forward, let release, but it wasn't. It wasn't that. It was some weird. It was a move that is not done in any other MK game. It's really strange. I'll have to forgive me. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but I remember I changed it to back low punch. You
Mm.
know, but that is another change, and it falls into just another option for players if they want to have balancing, or if they want original, which will not include the additional moves, because there will be new moves for say Scorpion will have a forward teleport, um, and there was one for I was messing around with an ice clone, like a la UMK3 for Sub Zero, and I actually
Mhm.
got it done. That's like an additional move. It's just another option you can turn on or off if you like, but yeah, that all falls back into having another option in the CMOS, the test menu, so people can turn on or off these balance changes. And like you said, sometimes it's some things are just plain broken, and with the speed of development, they miss some things. So we come along, and that's one of the things we like to do is we clean it up and make it the way everybody thinks it probably should have been.
Yeah, so just to pause for a second, you keep mentioning the test menu. So for people that don't know, which I didn't even know this for years, and I freaking love MK, but the test menus are hidden in there. It's not even in the service menu, like on the BIOS. So like if you go into the game, and I left myself a note back in 2019. That's how long ago. I have kept this in my inbox just to remind me of this. But it's like you have to hit a bunch of buttons, block X times on player one, then on player two, and back and forth to enter these menus. So it's complicated. It's not like flipping a switch. You have to. I don't know anybody that memorized it either. You have to pull out your little cheat sheet and go in. So that alone, just being able to access the test menu, is pretty awesome.
So just to clarify, I just hit the raised hand button. Not sure what that did. I don't know if you guys saw that. That's cool. I wanted to interject there. So with you're a little off with that aspect, because you're thinking of the EJB menu, the Ed Boon menu, which is
Oh.
which is a secret menu he programmed into the attract mode. You can hit. It's a combination of player one block and player two block, and they're a little different for each game, but you hit like player one 10 times, player two times, and you go back and forth about 5 or 6 times, and you'll get pretty much into it's almost a carbon copy of the test menu, which to elaborate on that, the test menu is pretty much for what they had for arcade vendors when they used to purchase these cabinets. 30 years ago, they can go in there and set their pricing on the game. They can change the audits, the difficulty and stuff, and all that stuff, which is only accessible when you would maybe unlock the machine and go in there and hit the button. So the EJB menu was a trick way to get into it, which basically had a few extra options. You can go in there and see the endings of the different characters. You might be able to see like a demonstration mode, a special thank you list of names. Um, so yeah, that's basically the differences between the two. So the original test menu is easily accessible, and like I said, off the top of my head, I want to say F2 is what you
Yeah,
would
it's
press
F2.
if you were playing it in MAME.
Yeah.
So that's what tripped me up, because the test menu, if anybody has original hardware, that's when you hit the test button on your super gun. It's about as easy as it gets. And that menu with the plus versions is extremely extended with all of the options that
Hmm.
we've been talking about, everything in there. But it was just when you mentioned the original test menu, that's what tripped me up, because there really isn't many options that we as home players would care about. It's
Yeah.
exactly like you said for the arcade operators, but there was a bunch of weird stuff in the other menus. Are those unlocked at all, by the way? Is that
Um,
something you could just get into?
Explain unlocked. Getting to the
Like,
test menu itself.
no, getting to the other menus where you have to hit block going back
Oh,
and
the
forth. Is it
EJB menu.
EJB menu? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, those can be accessed with the code at the attract mode.
Hmm.
It's very, it's kind of hard to do. You got to be, from my experience, you don't have to be super fast. You just have to be consistent with the timing of press and block. You got to be consistent with your presses. But it was actually a significant flaw looking back, but it's not going to affect anybody these days because these machines aren't used for monetary purposes at arcades. But you can go in there and actually get into the settings and change it to free play. So yeah, you can do that. But other than that, it's the only way to access the other test menu, like we spoke earlier. The original one is to actually use the key, unlock it, and hit your test button inside. Or if you got like a super gun, like you said, you got a test button you can hit as well.
And in the plus modes, have you made it easier to get into that EJB menu just for people that are curious about it, just see the endings and stuff like that, or is that just you didn't bother because it doesn't really matter?
There's
Yeah, it's
actually, go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry.
yeah. There's really nothing in there that we could have added to or anything like that. But most MAME versions, have cheat options. And I think there's a cheat that lets you. I think during attract mode, you hit block like 3 times on player 2 or player 1, one of the two, and it puts you right in the EJB menu.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, that was just some fun Mortal Kombat lore that I didn't know at all until just a few years ago. It probably was before the 2019 when I left myself a note that I learned it, but then I forgot about it. So then I saw it again. I was like, don't forget, write that down. So when you're messing with yours, you
There,
can enter it.
yeah, when you're digging in code, you find all types of
Hmm.
things like that. Like for instance, I was looking into NBA Hang Time, NBA Jam, and I found out there's a way to get up. There's a secret audits menu, which you can access, and also a secret developers screen. You can see the pictures of developers. So it's kind of cool when you go through and you're digging in these games and you find things that you've never seen, and it's not on the cutting room floor. I don't know if you're familiar with the cutting room floor website, but it's
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yep. There you go. So it revolves around things that are cut from the game and aren't in there, but maybe in there. Like for instance, MK2 plus Sub Zero's air freeze. His sprites were actually still on the ROMs. All I had to do was bring the animation to life and program the actual freeze routine and stuff.
All you had to do.
All
So,
All you had
so
to do.
I
Fuck,
mean,
fuck that. All I
so
had to do was rebuild the car from scratch. No problem.
so it's really cool for us. I can say it's for Drew too, but it's really cool when we find new stuff. Like for instance, when we found that Scorpion has an unused mask on his his fight intro screen for Ultimate MK3 is actually a skull instead of his cloth mask or his fabric mask. He's got a skull face, which is really cool. So that's like one of the coolest things about doing this is just finding unused stuff and bring it to life. You know.
Yep.
Hmm.
There is almost a complete sprite rip of Robotron 2084 on the UMK3 chips.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
That's weird.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
You'd be surprised how much leftover data comes. Like in MK2, there's an actual whole series of I think bios for MK1 Sonya and MK1 Kano still on the program
Hmm.
ROMs. Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah. It's like
Huh.
they didn't take and they started from where they were, added it, and whatever they didn't use, just kind of got overwritten as they went down the program file.
Jeez, that's crazy. I never heard that one before
Yep.
either. So, what would you recommend that people check out for each of the two main release games? So somebody goes, they download it, or they flash the ROMs on their original arcade board for both MK2 and 3, and I think you should each answer with your favorite games, of course. So, but what do you think's the first thing you recommend they check out? And character select screen's too easy. They can't say that. Obviously, they're going to see the different characters on
Go
it.
ahead. I'll let you go, Drew.
All right. I would say check out Rain and Noob Saibot. Rain has, of course, his complete move set. He actually exists in the arcade now, and Noob Saibot has his move set from Trilogy. It's much less broken because there's hit limits on certain moves now, and you can't perform infinites based on a single pop up anymore.
Mhm.
But definitely check out the new, less broken characters.
That's awesome, and that's obviously UMK3
Yeah, yeah, it's
plus.
UMK3
How
plus.
about you, Paul, for two?
Oh, for MK2, I think I kind of hit on what I like the most about. But for MK2, I feel like one of the coolest things, like if you're a veteran and you've played this game, for the past 25, 30 years, and you might not know about the secret characters that are playable, but one of the processes to get them, because I'm very stingy when it comes to you giving people stuff, so I make you earn the unlocks. Like you're gonna have to go in there and find out how to unlock Smoke so you can play as them, how to unlock new Cybot, Jade, and there's even bosses that are playable in MK2 if you didn't know. That's even deeper in the game. So one of the things, I guess, one of the coolest things to check out is, if you've played the game a lot, those are some challenges you should probably start looking into doing because you know what the game's about, and this gives you the additional, I guess, replay value to go in there and try to unlock these secret characters to play as the secret characters.
Hmm, that's awesome. For me, it was just I think, and obviously this just goes to show how much of a freaking nerd I am. But when I first fired up UMK3, I just UMK3 plus. I just kind of played a couple rounds of it just to see, and then I went into the test menu, and I think I spent like 15 minutes just looking into every single option, thinking about how it would affect the game. Do I want it on? Do I not? And it just as a nerd, that would be my first suggestion: is to go through and just see everything that you added, because it's one thing to read through all your change logs on the website,
Thank
but
you
it's
for
another to
reading it,
see
by
it
the way.
yeah, of course. But it's the other thing to actually see it right there, and and understand what you have access to now.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many of these fixes that go maybe undocumented because they fell through the cracks as well too. Like, I don't even know if I documented it, but if you go through, for instance, in MK2, if you've ever noticed, there's a frame of Kung Lao's uppercut animation where half of his body is just missing.
Mm.
You would have to go through and go frame by frame to see it because it's so fast, but half his body is just gone. So I'm not sure if that's documented. That's just one off the top of my head that might have fell through the cracks. But most of the time, all those little things that may slip through are just little fixes, bug fixes. Like, for instance, animation updates. Like another big fix off the top of my head would be like MK1. If you ever watched the ninjas, how they walk, their animation is real clunky, like they do like a shuffle.
Hmm.
That's fixed as well. And then there's also a pose problem between some of the ninjas because they essentially share all the assets except for maybe an animation, an idle animation, which can be buggy sometimes from the original game. But yep, that's. I mean, the documentation is half the battle. I feel like
Hmm.
for some of this, man, and like Drew said, kudos if you actually read through the log because there are a lot of changes that go into it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even if people don't have the patience to read through, just scroll through and look and try to absorb everything that's coming in front of you and understand all of the different things that were done. I think that at the very least is something people should do, just to understand what's gone into all these.
Definitely.
So for MK1, this might be a stupid question, but I do have a bit of nostalgia that I'm now remembering because of this thing. I remember the big debate back in the early 90s with kids, like preteen, middle school, whatever you want to call them, getting to smoke in the pit stage on the home console versions. Everybody would then try to go get it at the arcade, and it wasn't accessible in the arcade, right?
Well, I think you mean Reptile from MK1.
I'm sorry, Reptile.
It's
Yeah,
all right.
I'm visualizing all of the characters now, and they all wear the same ninja outfit.
Right.
So.
I totally understand. From what I know, they're both accessible on arcade and home platforms. Because I had Mortal Kombat 1 on Sega Genesis, and I'm pretty sure there was Reptile on there. But
Yeah, you could. Yep.
Yeah, on the home
years.
versions there were, but not in the arcade. One of the differences was you look for like the shadow going over the moon on the home versions, but that was not in the arcade. But you could still access Reptile in the arcade by double flawless and fatality without using block, unless you're Liu Kang, and that's the only time you could use block is during his fatality. That still is all. That's all legit for the arcade version, and that's still the same with the plus version, right?
Yep, all that's the same. And there used to be, as far as MK1 goes, in this actual thing to fight Reptile, there used to be a problem where you couldn't do Sonya's fatality because her fatality included the block button. But later revisions, they actually fixed that. And there was also a notable bug, points difference you would get as player 1 or player 2 if you were to fight Reptile. I think player 1 would get like 10 million points if you beat him. And off the top of my head, I want to say player 2 only got 1 million because there's a bug. But there's a big discrepancy between, well, not discrepancy, there's a big difference between the points difference between player 1 and player 2, which was also a bug fixed in MK Plus. But yeah, the same applies. You got to get the silhouettes across the moon, and double flawless with the fatality, and all that. That was brought into MK2 as well. MK2 Plus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the original pit was brought into MK2 Plus.
I have it here. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've played it.
You may have to go into the settings and enable the actual levels. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. So it's an option. Like I said, we like to give options. So it's in there.
So the first one, though, the shadow over the moon, that's the one thing I'm still confused about. Did that happen, the silhouette over the moon? Did that happen in the arcade version? And did it not happen in certain versions of the arcade?
No.
Was it like the first revisions it didn't?
So the first, actually, when I bought my MK1, my actual arcade, it had revision 1.0, the initial one. And that didn't have Reptile. I want to say Reptile, if I'm not mistaken, came 3.0 or 4.0 revision. I'll have to look that up. But there's only a certain chance of you getting silhouettes. So if you don't have the silhouettes, it doesn't matter if you do a double flawless fatality. You're not meeting all the requirements to find him. So that's basically what it was. I want to say it was probably a 12.5% chance that you'd get silhouettes.
It's all coming back to me now that we're talking this out. I think that was it. The original versions of the arcade didn't have it at all. And that also had the bug where if you just did a high kick jump, backed up, did a high kick jump, you could beat the whole game that way. I watched people do that in my pizza place in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I'm growing up. They had version 1.0 of the game, and that's how we beat it. It was just by jump kicking the whole time.
Yep, 1.0. You can still do that to a certain extent, but it's a lot better. And also 1.0 also didn't have alternate palettes either. I don't think you're able to select the same character if I remember correctly. It's been so long. Like I said, I bought my machine with 1.0, but upgraded it to, I think 4.0 was the highest revision you can get for Y unit because that's the initial board mine came with. And I do have a T unit, which obviously is for developing MK Plus. So, and that is based on revision 5.0.
And so all of these are basically, the plus versions of 1, 2, and 3 are all based on the latest version. Plus, if there's anything better from the other versions, that's all added in and kind of mixed into the plus. But they're all really based off the least buggy, most full versions of the game.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So now MK Turbo, was that official, not official hack back in the day where I believe the developers put it out before MK2 came out or something. Is Mhm.
There's a little. I'm not sure to be honest. There's been rumors that people that worked on the game made it
Mhm.
because you have to have that nibble board. I think they call it.
Mhm.
Now you can obviously you can play it on MAME, but you have Turbo Ninja hack. Um, there's Reptile Man hack I've got, and I think there may be one other one. But if if you've played the MK Plus build out there that's available now, you can actually turn on turbo mode, which I've brought a lot of that stuff in there. Oh, there's Nifty Combo. That's another one.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, you can. I brought over a few of those cool, like kind of nostalgic things. Like if you're Sub Zero and you freeze your opponents in Turbo Ninja Hack, you'll start levitating a little bit. Just so you can juggle them. And there's other things like uppercut recovery. I think is in the delay is decreased, so you can juggle a lot. But there's a lot of those little things that I've tried to bring over, and like I said, they're optional, so you can't
Yeah.
go wrong with it.
Because that was the thing when I got my MK board, it came with the turbo ROMs, and the story I was told, which you never know if it's internet lore or just complete bullshit, was that it was when arcade operators were not yet getting MK2, but MK1 people were starting to move on to different games, so it kind of came from the company officially, unofficially type of thing, and the version I had was faster, and you could do your special moves in the air as well. And it just was one of those neat ways to approach it. I don't know if I would say it was better than the original, but it was a trip being able to do
Oh,
that on a
definitely,
game
yeah,
that you'd never be able to do it before. So,
definitely, yeah. You gotta love the lore. I mean, there's so
Hmm.
much to it.
oh yeah, remember all the rumors from the '90s? Just because
Oh,
there was no
jeez,
Oh
real
yeah.
internet and everything.
nudalities, you name it, they're all out
Yep,
there.
Pedro
the
and
real
MK3.
SNES blood code. There
Pedro,
was none.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of fun
the
stuff, and
sweat code.
yes, I think NBA Jam took the cake though for the most rumors about a game. I think at least at that time. I mean that there were so many things we were chasing as kids, and some of it existed, like the whole Bill Clinton thing, and like obviously some of them didn't. There was never the Michael Jordan hack. Officially, there was the one. If anybody's read the book, there's that one, but that was it.
I
So
like to tease people that are in my scene on the arcade side, and I tell them, "Hey, Michael Jordan's in my NBA hang time. I don't know about yours. He's in mine." But
that's funny.
they had an actual. I don't know if you know the backstory. They had the MK. Remember the MK characters they had in NBA Jam?
Yeah.
They had a problem with that. The NBA did, so they had to take them out.
Oh
And
wow.
there was also a unused quote unquote fatality in NBA Jam. I think it had to do something along with the lines if you would push your opponent and they would start bursting into flames, going to a crisp. They obviously omitted that as well.
Aw, that would have been hilarious.
I'm sure it's in there.
Well, I appreciate the insight into your games. I'm such a massive fan of your work, and obviously the MK games as well. And it was very cool to finally talk to you. We've all exchanged messages over the years, but this was a very cool chat. Was there anything that I didn't talk about that you guys wanted to mention? Was there an aspect of the game that I'm not seeing that you wanted to tell people about? Basically, like anything you wanted to add to all of this.
Go ahead, Drew. You got anything?
Oh man, kind of put me on the spot, Paul.
It's giving me time to think.
Oh, uh, I really don't. I mean, Paul gets to think, so I'm going to ramble for a second.
Go
Um,
ahead.
there's so much that goes into the game. Like you mentioned, it's something that takes it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of dedication. Some of the most fun that I had in this game was making things blow up, like making things just completely screw the game up. Like I long time ago, before I was working on UMK3 Plus, I had a hack out there. It was just very simply titled Revision 1.3, and one of the things in this hack was the blood stayed on the ground. It didn't dissipate, and that creates problems after a while, especially on some of the busier stages, especially in 2v2 when you have smoke characters out there. So you got all these different things flying around on the screen. I got to the point one time, I don't remember how it happened. The screen was flickering, all this crazy stuff was going on. I killed one character, and then instead of the next character hopping onto the screen and being ready to go, Robot Smoke just kind of like walks out onto the screen and just keeps walking and keeps walking and keeps walking. I can't hit him. I can't do anything. His side of the controls don't work. He just walked right on the screen and walked right off the screen, and that was that. And then the timer eventually ran out. Um, but yeah, like so that there's so much cool stuff in the game. There's so much cool stuff to learn about the game. But if you check out my long ago streams and some of Paul's long ago streams, like there's so much stuff that we crashed the game probably 20 times more than what we fixed anything.
Oh
So
yeah,
like this is
definitely.
one of those times where like the destination, like the journey is definitely half the destination.
Mm, that's neat. That must have been a trip.
It
Like everything's
was.
working fine, and then all of a sudden he just walks across the screen randomly. Like, is this shit haunted? Am I tripping? What's going on?
So let's see. The question was there something that you may have missed?
Or was there
Yeah.
something that you wanted people to know that we hadn't covered in this, in this chat?
Well, basically, the website is currently in a limbo. The MortalKombatPlus.com website is a limbo. So if you try to access that, you will have probably a connection issue. We were contacted, and I'm pretty sure we can talk about this now. We were contacted by WB um, with complaints of copyright infringement. So it's not a big ordeal. Everything's pretty much handled. But one of the processes was to take down whatever they deemed was a copyright on the website. Any kind of like images of the project that contained the game. So my thing is that's coming back soon. Obviously, I have to abide with their wishes. It's not my intellectual property. It's more of a project fan site, we call it, and I feel a little bit unfairly targeted. Um, but I guess that's what happens when something gets a little bit of notoriety, like a project that kind of gets kind of popular, and that's pretty much it. I mean, the website's going to be back online soon. Um, and I think that's about it. I think that's all I have to share about that. So, I'm sorry if people are trying to access it to get the patches because that's where they were hosted originally, and they're still there. All the hosting's still there. It's just until all the DCMA, is it DMCA? Maybe
DMCA, yeah.
DMCA is fixed. It won't be redirected to the hosting. So all the hosting is still there. I'm just waiting for the server of my services, which is GoDaddy, to allow me access back to it to remove said complaints. And that'll be all back to normal, and people can get the patches from the website again. But in the meantime, we'll give you the link to our Discord, which also has hosts of the patches. So if people want to patch their ROMs, they can patch their ROMs with our patches.
Yeah, everything that was available on the website is now linked through your Discord temporarily. So there's, people could still get everything that we're talking about, just not through the main site until it's back up.
Yep, pretty much.
That's the one downside about DMCA is anybody could file a complaint, and whoever has the most money or the better lawyer will win. Period. End of story. Doesn't really matter what you did, whether it's legal or not. It's or whoever has the most time to spend on it. A few people in the 3D printing scene were dealing with one psychotic troll that was just DMCAing everybody because that's his favorite hobby now. Because I guess that's what happens when you have no friends, hobbies, or anybody to talk to. So, yeah, that's a bitch. That sucks. But
yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I've come to I kind of was gonna expect sometimes coming into this kind of trouble with them, but it's like I said, it's not a big deal. It's just if we abide by their DMCA's complaints, we can proceed and have the website hosting resolved. So
Yeah, they didn't tell you cancel the project or we'll sue you. They just said take our intellectual property off your website.
Right. So the
fair enough.
Yeah. So to get a little bit into it, they see that we have people contributing, maybe donations because they like what we're doing, and they went as far as saying, "Hey, we want all those donations." It's like,
no.
What? So I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm like, look, they also said, "Hey, we BCC'd our website people here. We want you to sign over your domain name to Warner Brothers." And I'm like, copyright.org, my man. You can't. No, that's mine. So, that's the thick of it. Nothing more than that. So basically, I just wanted to say that that's going to be back on soon. So.
Yeah, that's happened so many times. I've been a part of that so many times where a big company will step in and say, like, we're going to take everything. And you don't blink. Just look them dead in the virtual eye and tell them to eat a bag of slimy dicks. And then it's like, okay.
And just a satchel of Richards.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that happened allegedly, maybe in like 2000. I had equipment that may or may not have been used to get DirecTV for free, and they sent me a letter saying that if I pay them $5,000 right now,
we'll forget about it
and admit guilt, they'll forget about it. Or if I don't, they're going to come after me for the full extent, $150,000 per device that was ordered for everything else. And I'm looking at it like, how do they know what I'm using this for? You can't. So I called a lawyer and they were like, how would they know what you're using it for? That's bullshit. Funny enough, the same programmers were used to program Homebrew or TurboGrafx-16 or PC Engine cards as well.
I remember those.
So it's one of those things where he's like, no, this is typical big corporate lawyer
scare
bullshit.
tactics.
Yep. Try to freak you out. And he's like, I'll write this letter for free. And he basically was like, I'm Bob's lawyer. If you're going to try this bullshit, you contact me. If you contact me again, we're going to sue you for harassment. That was the last I heard of it. So,
it's nice. I have to try that next time.
Yeah, well, the internet made it a little bit harder for people to get away with stuff like that. So if you do that, talk to a lawyer first, spend the $100 or something, and have them send the "go fuck yourself" letter, and that way it's not on you, but
it's authentic. There you go.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, I'm glad that you had the foresight to realize that they were just bullying and to just say no. And I think what they came back with is what you knew from the beginning you were going to have to deal with at some point, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you're working with somebody else's IP, it's going to happen at some point or another. So
the timing of it couldn't have been worse because I think UMK3 Plus Public Beta 2 released like 3 weeks or something prior to that.
Maybe that's what got it up there.
Probably.
A little bit.
Might have been.
Don't forget, the more popular you get, the bigger target you are.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is that you're doing. So that's it. But, well, I'm glad you're still here. I'm glad you're still working on it. And if something ever does happen where they try to shut your website down, don't worry. Myself and the rest of my crazy friends will make sure that there's more copies of this floating around than there are the original, just to stick it to them. So,
nice. Appreciate it.
Hell yeah. Thank you both for your time. This was freaking awesome. I really loved talking about MK. Maybe the next release or something, we could do the same thing, but like a live stream where we play the game on Fightgate or something. You two could take turns just whooping the shit out of me, and maybe I'll get Art or Carsey or somebody up over here, or on my end, just to balance it out.
2v2. Nice.
Absolutely. So thank you both. I'll have links to where to get all the stuff that we talked about, to your Discord, of course, to where you could file a complaint against Warner Brothers. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. Don't bring any more. Of course, your Twitter accounts or social media. I'll make sure everybody knows where to find you. And thank you both so much. This was awesome.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.